Part 31. The Prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 301. Xiao Jinyan suddenly raised his head and looked at the emperor, and retorted, "Father, Shen Liangdi has no fault, why should she be locked up in the cold palace?" Compared to Xiao Jinyan's nervousness, Shen Shuwei was much calmer. She glanced at the emperor secretly, with a look of solemnity on her face. Probably out of anger. The emperor glanced at Shen Liangdi, whom he had met several times. She was not inferior to Princess Suiyan in appearance, and the aura between her eyebrows and eyes was incomparable to Princess Suiyan's beauty. This is probably the capital that charms the prince. Shen Liangdi's only fault is that she was unable to conceive, and she also seduced the prince into doting on her, leaving him childless. The emperor's voice was cold, with a force that could not be ignored. Xiao Jinyan was stunned when he heard the words. He tried to explain, but he thought that Xiaju was not pregnant yet. Any explanation in his father's ears would only make him more angry. If you want to prove that Xiaju is okay, you can only make her pregnant. Xiao Jinyan suppressed the dissatisfaction in his heart and looked at the superior emperor in front of him. "Father, what about the second article?" The emperor's voice was cold. "You are unwilling to let Shen Liangdi go to the cold palace. Unless you are no longer worthy of being the prince, I can ignore whether you have any heirs for the time being." Although Xiao Jinyan guessed that the emperor would threaten him with the position of prince, he pursed his lips tightly. It took him 5 years to get the position of prince. How easy is it to give up now? Shen Shuwei was not a fool. He could tell that the emperor was threatening Xiao Jinyan with his position as prince. She raised her hand, thinking that this was ancient times, not a classroom, so she had to put down her hand and take a step forward to bless her body. "Your Majesty, I am willing to go to the cold palace." The emperor looked surprised. He didn't expect Shen Liangdi to invite herself to the cold palace. "You volunteered to go to the cold palace?" Shen Chu lowered his eyes slightly and replied, back to the emperor, "I voluntarily entered the cold palace." No matter how hard Xiao Jinyan tried to restrain himself, he could not let Xiaoju be left in the cold palace. He took a step forward and bowed. "Father, the cold palace is a place where women who make mistakes will enter. Shen Liangdi is not at fault. The fault lies with me, and I am willing to accept the punishment." Shen Shuwei raised his delicate little face and looked at Xiao Jinyan, surprised that he would give up the position of prince, which he had finally obtained with great difficulty. "Your Highness, I can go to the cold palace." Xiao Jinyan said coldly, "Shut up for me." Shen Shuwei. She was mean to her again. She glanced at the emperor, moved her body, came closer to Xiao Jinyan, and whispered, "Your Highness, it is better for me to go to the cold palace than to be punished by your Highness." It was hard for her to say too much in front of the emperor. She is not afraid of going to the cold palace. The worst thing she can do is expand agriculture and open up wasteland to grow vegetables. The emperor lowered his eyes and looked at the prince, equally shocked. He was shocked that his son would give up his position as prince because of a woman. He didn't know whether to be angry or happy that his son was too dedicated. There is nothing wrong with being devoted, but the mistake is forgetting that you are a prince, and you cannot put your children's personal love first. "Prince, have you thought clearly?" Shen Chu slightly tugged on Xiao Jinyan's sleeve and whispered, "Your Highness, after I go in, you can still fish me out. If you are not the prince, it will be difficult to fish her out." Xiao Jinyan was stunned when he heard this. Just because he gave up his position as prince temporarily does not mean that he will not take it back in the future. But what Xiaoju said was not unreasonable. If he gave up for Xiaoju, it would make his father even more angry. The father was angry and unleashed his anger on Xiaoju. The queen thought that the dog emperor just mentioned it last time, but she didn't expect that the dog emperor actually gave the prince a choice between these two paths. After getting the news, she hurried to the East Palace. After hearing what the dog emperor said, she didn't rush in, so she couldn't hear the second half of it. They say a friend in need is a friend indeed. Shenliangdi voluntarily entered the cold palace, but not everyone can do it. The prince's willingness to take the second path for Shenliangdi really surprised her. Who did this infatuation follow? The dog emperor does not have such good genes. The queen waved her handkerchief and walked in. She stepped forward and blessed her body. May your majesty be blessed with good fortune and good health. Xiao Jinyan and Shen Chuwei turned sideways and saluted the queen. The emperor had been rejected by the queen 2 or 3 times. When he saw the queen coming, he snorted in his heart. It's useless for you to plead for mercy. I won't listen to you. He picked up the teacup, took a sip slowly, and said calmly, why is the queen here? The queen took 2 steps forward and stood next to the emperor. She said she was afraid of the emperor, but she was also afraid. It was probably because of the strength of her mother's family that she dared to be so presumptuous. I heard that the emperor has been in a bad mood recently, so I came here to take a look. The emperor snorted in his heart, now he knows he cares about me. I'm telling you, it's too late. He said quietly, I am in a very good mood, which makes the queen worried. The queen is in a good mood, but she goes to Fenji Palace every day to dislike her. It's not good to dislike her. It's not good to dislike her. She compares everything with concubine Ning. The dog emperor is mentally ill. That's good. I'm still worried that the emperor will get angry. Xiao Jinyan lowered his eyes and listened to the inner words of his father and mother. If the mother knew that her father had deep feelings for her, she probably wouldn't bark like a dog emperor or a dog emperor. He turned his head and looked at Shen Chuwei. Xiaju would definitely not call him that in the future. Shen Chu raised her head slightly and saw Xiao Jinyan looking at her, and she smiled lightly. When Xiao Jinyan saw this smile, he had a bad feeling for some reason. After the overt and covert fighting between the emperor and the empress, they began to discuss the issue of whether Xiao Jinyan had any heirs and whether he was too doting. The queen insisted that Shenliangdi was just having difficulty conceiving and had no major fault, so it was inappropriate to be locked up in the cold palace. Finally, the emperor took a step back. Shenliangdi did not do anything wrong. She is confined to Xiaoxiang Pavilion and the prince is not allowed to visit. She will be released after she has a child. After the emperor finished speaking, he looked at the queen, what do you think? The queen couldn't help rolling her eyes. She had already made her decision, and she was still asking me? Listen to the emperor. After the queen finished speaking, she looked at Shen Chuwei and sighed helplessly. This is how the royal family is. She has no children and is favored by the emperor. Naturally, the emperor can't stand it. After the emperor and the queen left, only Xiao Jinyan and Shen Chuwei were left in the restaurant. Shen Chuwei pulled Xiao Jinyan to sit down at the mahogany round table and served him a bowl of rice. Your Highness, let's continue with lunch. How could Xiao Jinyan have an appetite at this time? He raised his eyes to look at Shen Chuwei, only to see her serve him a bowl of rice and eat with vegetables. No matter what time it was, it didn't stop her from eating. Shen Chuwei stuffed rice in her mouth. Seeing Xiao Jinyan staring at her, she tried hard to swallow the food in her mouth into her stomach. Your Highness, don't just look at me. People are made of iron and food is made of steel. If you don't eat, you will be hungry. Your Highness is busy every day. Only when you are full can you have the energy and strength to deal with those things. Xiao Jinyan was silent for a long time and asked, you will move to Xiaoxiang Pavilion later. Why are you not worried at all? Shen Chuwei just ate a piece of braised pork, why should I worry? It's not like I'm going to the guillotine, it's just a change of place to live. The most important thing is that your Highness is still the prince. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 302. Xiao Jinyan was stunned for a long time after hearing this. You suffered this injustice because of me. Shen Shuwei ate another piece of braised pork. Your Highness has endured so much pressure for my concubine. As the saying goes, a husband and wife are of the same mind, and their benefits are as strong as gold. I just went to Xiaoxiang Pavilion to live for a while. After Shen Shuwei finished speaking, she came over and said, Your Highness can still visit me secretly, and I can visit you secretly. Shen Shuwei is an optimist. Except for life and death, other matters are not important. What's more, Xiao Jinyan treated her sincerely, and her going to Xiaoxiang Pavilion for a short stay was not worth mentioning to Xiao Jinyan's pressure. Xiao Jinyan was amused by her words, and the pressure on her shoulders disappeared. I won't let you stay in Xiaoxiang Pavilion for too long. Shen Shuwei just took a bite of braised pork. This dish of braised pork was specially made for her by Xiao Jinyan. She couldn't help but eat a few more pieces. His Highness will not consummate his marriage with concubine Shui, and then both rain and dew will get wet, right? Xiao Jinyan said firmly and affirmatively, no. If it was really so easy to compromise, he wouldn't persist until now. That's pretty much it. Shen Shuwei lowered his head and continued to eat the food in the bowl. Xiao Jinyan saw her taking a bite of braised pork from left to right. He frowned and said, eat less braised pork. It's too greasy. I'm going to Xiaoxiang Pavilion to live a life of poverty. Your Highness still doesn't allow me to eat a few more pieces of braised pork. After Shen Shuwei finished speaking, she picked up a piece of braised pork and put it into her mouth, eating it with relish. Xiao Jinyan chuckled, I will have someone secretly send it to you. Shen Shuwei raised his eyebrows when he heard the words, and reminded in a low voice, then be careful, don't let anyone find out. Xiao Jinyan nodded cooperatively, yeah. After lunch, Xiao Jinyan ordered people to clean Xiaoxiang Pavilion and repair the broken areas. Xiaoxiang Pavilion is adjacent to Xiun Pavilion, but the environment is worse than Xiun Pavilion. After the weeds were dealt with, Xiaoxiang Pavilion became much more pleasing to the eye. Before Shen Shuwei left, she asked someone to take Bing Dilian to Xiaoxiang Pavilion, along with the drawing board. She thought she would draw inspiration one day. Looking at the backyard of Xiaoxiang Pavilion, there is such a large open space, and a small vegetable garden has been opened up. In the lotus pond next to it, it would be good to plant some lotus roots, and you can wash some lotus root powder later. Because no one has lived there for a long time, there is a lot of cobweb dust inside. It has been cleaned by the little eunuchs and replaced with new beds, wardrobes, beddings, screens, etc. Shen Shuwei saw that Xiao Jinyan was still instructing the young eunuch to clean up. She came over, tugged Xiao Jinyan's hand and said, Your Highness, go and do your work. Xiao Jinyan said, it's not as comfortable as living here in Hehuan Palace. Shen Shuwei said nonchalantly, I think it won't be too bad if it's right next to Xiun Pavilion. Xiao Jinyan leaned close to her ear and said, I am here to see you. Shen Shu slightly tiptoed and asked, bring some tea fruits to me when your Highness comes down. Xiao Jinyan agreed readily, okay. It was supposed to be a sad scene, but because of Shen Shuwei's optimistic temperament, the sadness was swept away and instead deepened their feelings for each other. After Xiao Jinyan left, Shen Shuwei was not idle and began to order Little Rabbit and the others to open up wasteland and grow vegetables. After the weeds were removed, she divided the land into several parts and laid bluestone slabs in between. Then sprinkled some flower seeds, sunflowers, baby's breath, chrysanthemums, cosmos, tulips, roses. Bring your own small kettle, fill it with spiritual spring water, and sprinkle it on the seeds. Xiao Gaizi picked some vegetables and cucumbers from Xiun Pavilion and put them into the vegetable basket, then climbed up the wall and hung down with a rope. Chengzi stood in the corner. After the vegetable basket was put down, she untied the rope. Xiao Gaizi shouted on the wall, Chengzi, is it enough? If it is not enough, I will pick more. That's enough. Chungzi carried the vegetable basket to the door of the small kitchen. The small stool was brought from Xiun Pavilion. She sat on the small stool and folded vegetables to prepare dinner. Yuan Gungun also came with him. Yuan Gungun was not afraid of strange places, but lowered his head and ate the vegetable leaves. There was a fire in the small kitchen, and the chimney was filled with green smoke. Xiaoxiang Pavilion, which was originally deserted and desolate, now has the smell of fireworks. Concubine Su and Tao Liangyuan came to visit as soon as they learned that Shen Shuwei was imprisoned in Xiaoxiang Pavilion, and they brought a lot of food. There are guards guarding the entrance of Xiaoxiang Pavilion. Except for the prince who cannot visit, others can still enter. After gaining access, Concubine Su couldn't wait to walk in, waving her handkerchief. Tao Liangyuan followed closely behind. Shen Liangdi, we are here to see you. Concubine Su has a habit of howling without seeing anyone. They are all used to it. Shen Shuwei poured tea for the two of them. Sit down and talk. The emperor is so cruel that he imprisoned you in Xiaoxiang Pavilion. Concubine Su looked at it when she came. Xiaoxiang is worse than Xiun Pavilion. Where is the place for people to live? Tao Liangyuan sighed, that's how the royal family is. I just don't know what your highness's plans are now. Shen Chu smiled and reassured, you don't have to worry about me. I'm just here to stay for a while, and his highness will come to get me out. I heard that this time the emperor is determined to let the rain and dew come to your highness equally, so that you can conceive an heir as soon as possible. If your highness doesn't comply, you won't be able to get out either, Concubine Su reminded. His highness will not consummate their marriage, and I also believe that his highness will be able to fish me out in the future. As soon as Shen Shuwei finished speaking, Concubine Su slapped the table. It startled both of them. You believe in his highness so much, I'm really afraid that his highness will let you down one day. She, who had read N storybooks, began to become sentimental. When resting at night, Shen Shuwei lay on the bed. It was rare that she could fall asleep as soon as she touched the pillow. She didn't recognize the bed. In the dark night, a cat suddenly cried, meow. Shen Shuwei opened her eyes. Was it Sichuan? When she just came in, she asked Xiao Jinyan not to commit crimes against the wind and wait until the storm was over before coming. So it shouldn't be Xiao Jinyan who brought Sichuan. She got out of bed with doubts, put on her shoes, put on a coat, and opened the door and walked out. There were only 6 palace lanterns in the yard. Shen Shuwei looked around and didn't see Sichuan. She closed the door with doubts. Did I hear it just now? She turned around and was about to go back to bed, and saw a figure standing in the room. The figure was slender, and the night was too dark to see the face clearly. What is certain is that it is not Xiao Jinyan. Who are you? Who are you? The two said almost in unison. Shen Shuwei thought it was funny, you broke into my house and asked me who I am. At this time, there was a faint sound of footsteps. The man in black found something wrong and immediately ran away through the window. Seeing the man in black had left, Shen Shuwei immediately opened the osman thus on the low table and found that the mung bean cake sent by Tao Liangyuan was still there. She was relieved. Fortunately, her mung bean cake is still there. Then she touched the lotus, which was also still there. At this time, a very pleasant voice suddenly came from behind, Xiaoju. Good evening, my dears. The expected twins have been arranged. 4 chapters and 8,000 words have been updated today. Please support with monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. More updates will be added if there are more tickets. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 303. After the man in black left, he used Qinggong to quickly go to Yuxiang Palace. At this time, concubine Su was sleeping soundly. The man in black walked in, as if he were back at home. He took out his firebrand and lit 2 candles in the room with ease. The dark room suddenly lit up, and he came to the bedside and looked down at the person on the bed. His eyes were closed tightly, and he seemed to be sleeping soundly. The man in black reached out and pushed concubine Su, who was sleeping soundly. "Wake up." Concubine Su opened her eyes drowsily and saw a person standing next to the bed. His whole body was dark. She was so frightened that she subconsciously screamed. The man in black quickly reached out to cover her mouth and nose. "Aha!" Concubine Su couldn't scream out, but Karen became more awake. The man in black had a faint scent of crabapple flowers, which he discovered after many contacts. It was certain that the person standing at the head of the bed was the man in black. "It's me." After saying this, the man in black let go of concubine Su. Concubine Su sat up, and the quilt slipped off her shoulders, revealing her fair and round shoulders and sexy collarbones. Concubine Su did not notice that the quilt slipped, revealing the seductive beauty. She got the suspender pajamas from Shen Shuwei and thought they were more convenient than a belly band. She rubbed her sleepy eyes and said, "Today is not the agreed time, why are you here?" Caught off guard, the man in black looked at him. "Every time we meet, concubine Su is always well dressed, but I didn't expect her to be so boldly dressed when sleeping." Out of good intentions, the man in black bent down and pulled up the quilt to cover her. Concubine Su paused while rubbing her eyes. The black-clothed woman who was looking down stretched out her hand. Out of instinct, she pushed with both hands and pulled up the quilt to cover her body. She glared at the man in black. "What do you want to do?" "I'm just covering you with a quilt." After the man in black finished speaking, he added, "I'm not interested in married women." Concubine Su felt that she had been insulted, and she snorted, "It seems that I am interested in you, a man in black who breaks into the palace at night. Even if I want to find you, I will find a gentle and elegant man." Concubine Su has known the man in black for more than a month. From the beginning, she was frightened, but now she is no longer so afraid. The man in black was not annoyed, but comforted him. "I'll dream after I fall asleep." Concubine Su. The man in black said seriously, "I have something to ask you." Concubine Su said in a bad tone, "What are you asking?" The man in black asked straight to the point, "What is the name of the woman who moved into Xiaoxiang Pavilion today?" After speaking, Concubine Su looked at the man in black warily. "Do you know her?" The man in black said, "He looks familiar, and his eyebrows are somewhat similar to Xiaoju." The man in black almost slept in Xiaoxiang Pavilion at night. Today he saw someone moving in during the day. Out of curiosity, he saw a woman whose facial features were somewhat similar to Xiaoju. When Concubine Su heard the similar words, she thought of the stand-in joke. She said, "She is not Xiaoju, she is the woman of His Royal Highness. You must not have any ideas about her." The man in black looked at the aggrieved Concubine Su. "Why are you so excited?" Concubine Su knew that the man in black was highly skilled in martial arts, so what if Shen Liangdi was kidnapped in the middle of the night? What if you plot something against Shen Liangdi? The more Concubine Su thought about it, the more frightened she became. She frowned and said, "Shen Liangdi and His Highness are in love. You can't use Shen Liangdi as a substitute just because she looks similar to your sweetheart." The man in black didn't bother to explain to Concubine Su, so he just said some words that he couldn't understand. "Are you sure she's not Xiaoju?" The man in black thought for a moment and said, "Xiaoju is her nickname." Concubine Su said, "I'm sure and sure, her name is Shen Shuwei, not Xiaoju." The man in black said without giving up, "Her full name is Feng Wu. The meaning of Wu's name is to make Xiaoju Yi happy and worry-free." "I told you she is not Xiaoju or Feng Wu, she is Shen Shuwei." Concubine Su almost yelled the last 3 words. She restrained her voice because of her identity as the man in black. Inside Xiaoxiang Pavilion, It was unusually quiet. Shen Shuwei heard someone calling her Xiaju. She stood up, turned around and looked behind her, and saw a figure standing behind her. The figure was very familiar. Your Highness. Xiao Jinyan walked over slowly, her delicate appearance invisible in the dark night. Why aren't you asleep yet? Didn't I tell you not to commit crimes against the wind? Shen Shuwei reached out and grabbed his hand, her palm feeling a little hot. Xiao Jinyan held her in his arms. Her body was soft and her skin was a little cold. He whispered, I was afraid that you might not be used to living there, so I came here to take a look. Don't worry, no one will notice. Shen Shuwei felt like she was being held by a big stove, so hot that she couldn't stand it. Such a warm embrace felt inexplicably like a couple in a long-distance relationship, seeing each other for the first time in a long time. But they only met during the day. My concubine is fine here. Your Highness doesn't have to worry. Then why haven't you fallen asleep yet? Xiao Jinyan knew that Shen Shuwei was both a glutton and a sleeper. He hadn't fallen asleep yet because he was not used to it. Shen Shuwei didn't plan to say that there was a thief, for fear of worrying him. Your Highness, when will you leave? Leave at 5 o'clock, Xiao Jinyan said, bending down to pick her up and striding towards the bed. Out of instinct, Shen Shuwei put her arms around Xiao Jinyan's neck. Seeing the man's eager look, she laughed softly. Xiao Jinyan laid her flat on the bed and looked at her. Why are you laughing? His hands were not idle as he spoke. Shen Shuwei said, Your Highness, you turned over the window in the middle of the night, is it to try to make a baby? Xiao Jinyan did not comment, he lowered his head and kissed her. He suspected that Xiaju tried hard to eat candy every day, and he could taste sweetness every time he kissed. Shen Shuwei said with some concern, Jinyan, are you too tired like this? Xiao Jinyan raised his head, Shen Shuwei explained, you come so late, and you have to leave at 5 o'clock. You have to have sex for at least an hour, and you only sleep for 2 hours a day. Xiao Jinyan was a little helpless. In such a good atmosphere, she always mentioned some irrelevant things. At this time, your focus should be on me. Shen Shuwei was so serious, isn't this just caring about you? Xiao Jinyan, it's better to take the initiative to kiss me. Shen Shuwei stretched out her arms and wrapped them around Xiao Jinyan's neck, and took the initiative to kiss his lips, learning to kiss him like Xiao Jinyan kissed her. After the kiss, she panted and asked, is it real enough? Xiao Jinyan chuckled, not enough. Shen Shuwei blocked his lips again without saying anything. When she kissed enough and was about to leave, a big hand held the back of her head tightly, and she couldn't leave. When Shen Shuwei felt like she was about to drown, Xiao Jinyan let her go. Your Highness, don't carry that sachet with you, it's harmful to your health. Xiao Jinyan asked hoarsely, what's wrong with the sachet? The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 304. How could Shen Shuwei have the nerve to say what her original intention was when she gave the sachet? She was vague, the old sachet is not as good as the new one, and it is not suitable to be worn close to the body. Xiao Jinyan was so smart that he could easily get the point. Then why do you say it hurts the body? Shen Shuwei kissed Xiao Jinyan's lips and tried to divert attention, let's continue. Xiao Jinyan approached her with a magnetic voice, what's in the sachet? Shen Shuwei wanted to refuse to say it. But Xiao Jinyan was too smart, he could always catch her weakness, attack the city and seize the land, make her defeated, and finally confess. There is a kind of medicinal material in the sachet, which helps the couple have a harmonious relationship. Xiao Jinyan guessed that the sachet was not ordinary, he looked at her puzzledly, harmonious relationship. Oh, Shen Shuwei explained in Xiao Jinyan's ear. After hearing this, Xiao Jinyan asked again, what did you have in mind at the beginning? I was thinking about you completely. With so many women, I was afraid that you were not strong enough. Xiao Jinyan's eyes darkened, making Shen Shuwei shrink her neck. Xiao Jinyan looked at her with a smile. I should thank you, right? Shen Shuwei shook her head vigorously. No, no. Xiao Jinyan should have expected that she would have all kinds of messy thoughts in her mind. In the end, Shen Shuwei didn't even have the strength to speak. She watched Xiao Jinyan hug her in his arms. Even if it was hot, she didn't have the strength to push him away. The next day, when Shen Shuwei woke up, Xiao Jinyan was no longer around her. Yesterday, Xiao Jinyan was confined to his house, so he climbed over the wall to find her and make a baby. If the emperor knew about this, wouldn't he be furious? Suiyan's poison was still not resolved, and she was only slowly treated with drugs. Although she could walk on the ground, her body was not as healthy as before. Shuiyao ran in happily. Princess, Shen Liangdi was ordered by the emperor to be imprisoned in Xiaoxiang Pavilion. It is said that she will be released after other people have children. Suiyan heard the words, and the haze of the past few days was swept away. Shen Liangdi was the most favored, and now she was imprisoned in Xiaoxiang Pavilion, which was simply her own fault. Please invite Imperial Physician when here. I will get better soon and serve you in the bed as soon as possible, otherwise it will be easy for others. I will go to invite Imperial Physician when right away. Shuiyao ran out. Chang Liangyuan was so happy to know that Shen Liangdi was imprisoned in Xiaoxiang Pavilion by the emperor. Concubine Shui was ill, and no one competed with her for favor. She dressed up early in the morning and went to the prince's bedroom with a big tonic soup. Xiao Jinyan had just returned from the court when he saw Chang Liangyuan wearing pink clothes, pink beads on her head, and a golden step-shaking hairpin. Chang Liangyuan liked blue clothes. Since she learned to wear them like Xiaju, she has been wearing pink clothes and even chose pink hair accessories. Chang Liangyuan bowed with a gentle smile. Your Highness, may you be blessed with good health. Xiao Jinyan's voice was cold and distant. Why is Chang Liangyuan here? Chang Liangyuan said softly, Your Highness works day and night. I personally stewed chicken soup for your Highness to try and replenish your body. Xiao Jinyan glanced at the food box in Huixiang's hand. Chang Liangyuan is thoughtful. I was just about to go to concubine Shui to see her. I just happened to borrow flowers to offer Buddha, and bring chicken soup to concubine Shui to replenish her body. Chang Liangyuan's smile froze at the corners of her lips. She couldn't help but put down the handkerchief in her hand. She actually gave the chicken soup she had worked so hard to stew to concubine Shui? Is concubine Shui worthy of it? Xiao Jinyan listened to Chang Liangyuan's dissatisfaction indifferently, and did not speak, waiting for her answer. The prince spoke, and Chang Liangyuan could not refuse, so she could only force a smile and nod. Your Highness, if you don't mind, of course. Xiao Jinyan, then I will go to visit concubine Shui. Chang Liangyuan chased after him and asked softly, Is it okay for me to accompany your Highness to visit concubine Shui? Xiao Jinyan only replied with one word, okay. Chang Liangyuan felt a little better after hearing this. Suiyan saw Xiao Jinyan coming and happily stood up to greet him, but was stopped by Xiao Jinyan. Concubine Shui is not feeling well, so there is no need to greet. Concubine Shui was very happy. Thank you for your understanding. Chang Liangyuan stepped forward and bowed, looking at Suiyan with a faint smile. Concubine Shui, I'm here to visit you. Are you feeling better? Suiyan saw that Chang Liangyuan had also come, and was disturbed by her and his Highness being alone together, so she was naturally unhappy. I'm much better now. Thank you, Chang Liangyuan, for your concern. We are all sisters. We should care for each other. Concubine Shui, you are welcome. Chang Liangyuan looked at concubine Shui calmly, feeling proud. She was not in good health, but she still wanted to sleep with her. Don't dream. Xiao Jinyan said calmly, Concubine Shui, this is the chicken soup stewed by Chang Liangyuan. I saw that you were not well, so I brought it to you to nourish your body. Lu 11 took out the chicken soup from the food box, put it on the round table, and then stepped back. Suiyan looked at the chicken soup and guessed that Chang Liangyuan prepared the chicken soup for Xiao Jinyan, but it was a pity that His Highness used it to nourish herself. When she looked at Chang Liangyuan, a look of satisfaction flashed in her eyes. Chang Liangyuan was unhappy, but she didn't show it. Xiao Jinyan looked at the various suspicions and jealousy between the two, and his goal was achieved. Xiaoxiang Pavilion. Today, Shen Shuwei directed the little rabbits to continue to open up wasteland and plant vegetables. When she was tired, she sat on the rattan chair and ate the peach-flavored ice cream prepared by Chengzi. At this moment, there was a sudden sound of a heavy object falling to the ground, followed by a scream of ouch. Shen Shuwei looked over and saw a figure falling from the top of the wall. She stood up curiously and walked over. The figure struggled on the ground for a long time before slowly sitting up. Under the scorching sun, the shiny bald head made her quickly guess who this person was. She supported her knees with both hands and stared at Wu Tan in confusion. "Wutan, how did you fall from the top of the wall?" Wutan looked at Shen Shuwei awkwardly. He stood up with the help of the wall, patted the dust on his body, and then looked up at Shen Shuwei. Wutan said, "There are people guarding outside. I can't come in." "I'm sorry to make Shen Liangdi laugh." Shen Shuwei nodded. "Then what are you doing here? Did another bird fall from the bird's nest?" "I heard that Shen Liangdi was punished." "I know Shen Liangdi, so I should come to visit her." Wu Tan took out an oil paper bag from his arms and handed it to Shen Shuwei. "For you." Shen Shuwei couldn't refuse the delicious food. After she took the oil paper package, she said, "Thank you, Master Wu Tan. You fell down to bring me delicious food. Is there any pain? I have ointment." Wu Tan shook his head. "No, it's okay." Then, the eunuch's shrill voice came from the door, "The queen is here." Shen Shuwei's eyes flashed with confusion. "Why is the queen here?" "I'll hide first." Wu Tan hurriedly limped into the grass in the backyard to avoid suspicion. Shen Shuwei wanted to help him up, and the queen's gentle voice came from behind, "Shen Liangdi, what are you doing?" To explain, the heroine is in the early stage of pregnancy, and the heroine herself doesn't know it yet. Good night, my dears. Being cute and acting cute to ask for monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. More tickets will be added. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 305. Hearing the queen's voice, Shen Shuwei gave up on helping Wu Tan. She turned around and looked behind her, and saw the queen's guards standing in a large area. Suddenly, she felt that the humble house was bright and glorious. She stepped forward and bowed, "May the queen be blessed with good health." "Get up." The queen looked around Xiaoxiang Pavilion, which was even more desolate than Xiun Pavilion. Both the house and the environment were much worse. Maybe it was because it was adjacent to the cold palace, which made people feel depressed and desolate. The queen retracted her gaze and looked at Shen Shuwei. Her fair little face was slightly rosy, and she was also pretty. "You can live here with peace of mind. I will let you out after a while." "Thank you, queen, for your concern." Shen Shuwei glanced at the bushes. She was afraid that the queen would find Wu Tan here, so she took 2 steps forward and said, "Queen, I have fresh fruits here. Do you want to try them?" The queen nodded. "Okay." Shen Shuwei took the queen into the house. There were no decorations inside, and even the furniture was very old. But after cleaning up, it became much cleaner and fresher. With popularity, the senses will also change. The queen sat down on the couch with her skirt lifted. Before Chengzi brought the fruit, she pointed to the things in the maid's hand and said, "These are some daily necessities, and some cakes." Shen Shuwei looked in the direction of the queen's finger and saw the maids put the things on the table one by one, including rouge and powder, hair oil, hair cream, shujin quilt, soft jade pillow, and 6 plates of various cakes. She was suddenly a little flattered. Why did the queen treat her so well suddenly? The queen said, I see that you don't like gold and silver jewelry, and your makeup is light. Although you are locked up in Xiaoxiang Pavilion, you should be more elegant and decent. So I will give you some rouge and powder. The queen was afraid that Shen Shuwei would become like those women in the cold palace if she stayed in Xiaoxiang Pavilion for too long. Thank you for your kindness, Queen Shen Shuwei secretly touched her face. She didn't care about it after washing her face every day. Did it become rough? Chengzi brought fresh cherries, peaches, and black plums, placed them in front of the queen, and then left. When the queen saw the cherries, her beautiful eyes lit up. After eating them last time, she had been thinking about them. Only the prince knew where to get them, but because of the issue of offspring, she couldn't bring herself to ask. The prince gave you the cherries, right? The queen couldn't wait to pick one up and put it in her mouth to taste it. The taste was the same. Shen Shuwei thought of the last time Xiao Jinyan had someone send some, so she agreed with a guilty conscience. There were 3 cherry trees in total, full of cherries, and she couldn't finish them even if she ate them every day. Unknowingly, the whole plate of cherries went into the queen's stomach. When she saw that it was empty, she suddenly felt a little embarrassed. Shen Liangdi, if you need anything in the future, please let me know and I will have someone send it to you. I will. Shen Shuwei nodded, I want to eat hot pot. Can the queen ask the imperial kitchen to send some beef, mutton, and meatballs? Eating hot pot in summer makes you sweat profusely, but it is refreshing. What's the difficulty? The queen ordered eunuch Ren, ask the imperial kitchen to send everything Shen Liangdi needs. Yes, eunuch Ren took the order and went to the imperial kitchen. The queen then asked curiously, what is hot pot? Shen Shuwei explained, Queen, it's similar to soup pot, very spicy, beef and mutton slices are eaten with hot pot. The queen nodded, not quite understanding, I haven't eaten hot pot yet, so it's a good opportunity to try it together. Okay. After Shen Shuwei agreed, she suddenly remembered that Wu Tan was still in the bushes. It was sunny outside. What if he got a fever? She suggested, is the queen busy? How about we eat hot pot together next time? Not busy, I've been a little free these 2 days. The queen waved her hand, even if she was busy, she would take some time to try the new hot pot. Shen Shuwei failed to persuade the queen, and was worried about Wu Tan in the bushes. The imperial kitchen sent a lot of beef and mutton. Chengzi had eaten hot pot many times, so she knew the process of making hot pot very well. It didn't take long for the hot pot ingredients to be ready. The hot pot base is ready, just boil it with water. In the soup pot, the red oil was boiling. Shen Shuwei picked up some mutton and beef and put them in, and then picked up some enoki mushrooms, kelp, and rice noodles, put them in a bamboo basket and put them in the soup pot. The queen quietly looked at Shen Shuwei's actions, and then looked at the soup pot. Just one look at it and she knew it was spicy and delicious. She couldn't wait to pick up the chopsticks. Shen Shuwei is an old hand at eating hot pot, and knows when the meat is cooked and when the vegetables are cooked. Wait, after that, she put some mutton and beef into the bowl in front of the queen, and also some vegetables. Without waiting for Shen Shuwei to speak, the queen picked up the mutton in the bowl, blew it, and put it into her mouth. It was a little hot, but it tasted good, so she ignored it. Shen Shuwei hadn't eaten for a while, and she was very greedy at this time. The queen's presence did not affect her speed of eating. The queen originally let Qingying serve the dishes, but now she did it herself, picking up whatever she wanted to eat, and being fast, fierce and accurate. Shen Shuwei, an old hand at eating hot pot, could be slower than the queen? After a while, the mutton and beef in the pot were almost picked up. Chengzi took chopsticks to add dishes. The queen was unwilling to be outdone, so she picked up a few times and became proficient. The two of them wiped their noses with handkerchiefs while eating, and did not forget to praise, "It's so spicy and delicious." After eating a hot pot, both of them were full. After the queen was full, Ching Ying called the phoenix chariot. He walked when he came, and was carried out when he left. Before leaving, the queen said, "I'll come again next time." Shen Shuwei. Is he addicted to eating? As soon as the queen left, Shen Shuwei immediately ran to the backyard. When she came to the bushes in the backyard, she saw a monk with a rosy face, and his face was red because he was exposed to the sun. Sweat was pouring down his forehead from his handsome eyebrows. Hai Ching was soaked in sweat and was wet. But Wu Tan sat like a bell, with his hands clasped together and his eyes closed. It looked like he was meditating. Shen Shuwei couldn't help but give a thumbs up. She really admired his concentration. In order to avoid suspicion and not let the queen find out, he could sit for more than an hour. "Wu Tan, get up, the queen is gone." Wu Tan slowly opened his eyes, sweat dripping from his long eyebrows and eyelashes, and saw Shen Shuwei's pretty face. "I'll help you up," Shen Shuwei said as he went forward to help him up. He found that he was soaked and walked a little unsteadily. "Don't do such dangerous things next time. I'll ask him to serve you rice." Wu Tan declined, "No, I should go back now." Shen Shuwei was a little worried, "But what if you fall again while climbing the wall in your current state?" "I will be more careful." Wu Tan held the wall and hesitated for a moment. He asked, "Has Shen Liangdi ever lost her memory?" You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 306. Just as Shen Shuwei ordered the little rabbit to bring the ladder over, she heard Wu Tan's question. She looked puzzled. "Why do you ask this?" Wu Tan said, "I know some physiognomy, and I asked Shen Liangdi when I saw her face." Shen Shuwei showed admiration when he heard it. "You can also read faces? Are you as good as Lord Lu?" Wu Tan chuckled, "I just know a little bit." "Has Shen Liangdi ever lost her memory?" "Yes, I forgot some things, but those are not important. Being happy now is the most important thing. When she was 10 years old, she fell on her head and forgot some things. The dean's mother said that forgetting is also a good thing. That means that the memory before the age of 10 must be not good." At this time, the little rabbit brought the ladder over and leaned it against the 2-meter-high courtyard wall. "I'm going back. Shen Liangdi, take care of yourself." Wu Tan looked at Shen Shuwei deeply and climbed up the ladder. Shen Shuwei thought that he was injured when he fell down in the morning, and it was to bring her delicious food. "Wu Tan, go slowly, I'll get you a rope." Shen Shuwei asked the little rabbit to get the rope. The little rabbit is worthy of being called a little rabbit, and its legs and feet are very nimble. It took a short while to get the rope. Before the little rabbit handed the rope up, Shen Shuwei saw Wu Tan's body, falling down like an onion. There was a bang. Shen Shuwei covered her heart that was almost scared out of her, and after she reacted, she held the ladder with both hands and was about to climb, but was stopped by the little rabbit. "My lady, climbing the ladder is too dangerous." "It's okay, I'll see how." Wu Tan fell. Shen Shuwei climbed the ladder to the top of the wall, and saw Wu Tan struggling to get up from the ground, then turned around and smiled at her, and limped away. She couldn't help but give a thumbs up again. The monk is really patient, he didn't say a word. The little rabbit was so anxious below. "My dear, come down quickly, it's too dangerous." "Don't be anxious when you come down." As soon as Shen Shuwei came down, Chengzi came over with Yuan Gungun, and said angrily, "My dear, Yuan Gungun is too greedy and ate the seeds in the ground." Yuan Gungun looked at Shen Shuwei with his big black eyes, aggrieved. If he could speak, he would say that there is no fence in the vegetable garden. Shen Shuwei poked Yuan Gungun's nose with his finger. If you steal again, I will cut off your food for a day. Yuan Gungun shrank his neck and didn't dare to protest. It took 3 days to create a brand new vegetable garden. The flower seeds also sprouted and were growing at 3 times the usual speed. Shen Shuwei started to live a salted fish life of eating and sleeping again. Chengzi picked a plate of fresh cherries, washed them and put them on the low table in front of Shen Shuwei, and then brought some delicious cakes. When she came back again, she found that the plate of cherries was gone, and there were only a few cakes left. Why do you like sour food these 2 days? Maybe it's hot. Shen Shuwei wiped her sweat and picked up a cake to continue eating. It would be nice if there were ice cubes. Chengzi saw Shen Shuwei sweating profusely and began to feel distressed. After dark, mosquitoes began to increase. With mosquitoes, it was hard to sleep well at night. Everyone took a palm leaf fan to drive away mosquitoes. Chengzi took a palm leaf fan to drive away mosquitoes for Shen Shuwei. The next day, Shen Shuwei locked herself in the room to study mosquito coils. In fact, mosquito coils were ready-made and there were a lot of them stored in the space. Before she came through, she saved a bunch of items in a fit of excitement and spent all her savings. She was trying to figure out how to take out the mosquito coils and make it more reasonable. After thinking about it, she decided to break the mosquito coils. When the finger-long mosquito coils were taken out, Chengzi and the others were curious but didn't ask much. When they were lit at night, the mosquitoes were much better. Shen Shuwei had a good sleep, and Chengzi didn't need to use a palm leaf fan to drive away mosquitoes. The next day, the eunuch from the imperial kitchen came to deliver food. Since Shen Shuwei was confined to Xiaoxiang Pavilion, she was almost unable to bear the sight of the food when she returned to the pre-liberation period. Shen Shuwei didn't stop the imperial kitchen from delivering food, because it could be fed to chickens and ducks. They ate all the food made by Chengzi. The eunuch took out the food from the food box and placed it on the dining table as usual. After placing it, he didn't leave in a hurry, but kept looking inside. When Shen Shuwei came out, she saw a slender eunuch standing in the restaurant, wearing eunuch service. Usually, a thin eunuch was the one delivering food, but why was it such a big one today? Shen Shuwei walked over with curiosity and found that the eunuch was looking up at her, and his eyes felt strange. Why are you staring at me? This is my first time delivering food, don't be surprised, young lady. The eunuch was disguised as a man in black. Chengzi asked in confusion, why don't you call yourself a slave? The man in black reacted and quickly admitted his mistake, this is my first day on duty, and I'm not used to it yet. Chengzi learned that the young eunuch was a newcomer, so he kindly reminded, then you should be careful. If you are caught in the wrong, be careful with your head. Thank you for the reminder, young lady. The man in black found that the inner court of the palace was not as unkind as he imagined. Shen Shuwei thought the young eunuch should leave by now, but as soon as she sat down, she found that the young eunuch was staring at her. She couldn't help asking, why do you always stare at me? The man in black explained, the young lady looks very similar to my sister. I haven't seen her for several years, and I couldn't help but look at her a few more times. Shen Shuwei expressed her understanding. There are so many people in the world who look alike. Even if they are not related by blood, they must look alike. The man in black stared at Shen Shuwei for a long time, then he retracted his gaze and walked out of Xiaoxiang Pavilion with the food box. At night, the man in black came to Yuxiang Palace again. He didn't expect that concubine Su was bathing, so he broke in and saw such an erotic scene. Concubine Su was stretching her arm and gently wiping it with a towel. The man in black saw the cinnabar of Xiaogong on concubine Su's arm from the corner of his eye. The vermilion cinnabar of Xiaogong was particularly eye-catching on her fair arm. He paused in his retreat and stared at the cinnabar of Xiaogong for a while. The concubines would apply cinnabar of Xiaogong after entering the palace, and the prince's women would also apply cinnabar of Xiaogong. The presence of cinnabar of Xiaogong means that she has not been in bed. The man in black left calmly. Concubine Su didn't expect the man in black to come to her at this time, and she didn't know that she was seen by the man in black. Asterisk. In the dead of night, Xiao Jinyan used light skills to avoid the patrol and guard of the Imperial Guards and came to Xiaoxiang Pavilion. When he climbed in through the window, he found that there was no one on the bed. After looking around, he saw a dark figure huddled in front of the cabinet, making chewing sounds from time to time, which was very much like a rat looking for food at night. He walked over with doubts and stopped beside the figure. People who learn martial arts are used to restraining their footsteps, so the figure didn't know someone was coming. Xiaoju, what are you doing? Shen Chuwei paused in his chewing and looked up. With the faint moonlight, he saw a huge figure standing behind him. My dears, good evening. 4 chapters with 8,000 words have been updated today. Please support with monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. More updates will be added if there are more tickets. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 307. If she hadn't heard the familiar voice, she would have thought that the man in black had come again. Who would have thought that eating at this time would be caught? She had a big mouthful of mung bean cake in her mouth, and hurriedly ate it into her mouth, trying to swallow it. As a result, she swallowed it too quickly and choked. Xiao Jinyan looked at her actions in confusion. What are you doing? Shen Chuwei pounded her chest and couldn't speak. Xiao Jinyan found something wrong, stepped forward and squatted, patting her back. Shen Chuwei breathed a sigh of relief and finally swallowed it. Xiao Jinyan saw that she was fine, got up and lit the candle in the room, and the dark room was instantly lit up. He turned to look at Shen Chuwei and found that she was squatting on a low table, and there was a mung bean cake on the low table, with 3 pieces left. It's not difficult to guess that Xiaju was squatting there eating mung bean cake just now. It's so late, why are you still eating something so sweet? Xiao Jinyan walked over and sat down next to her. I'm hungry and can't sleep. I want to eat before I sleep. After being discovered, Shen Chuwei openly reached into the plate again, picked up a piece and put it into her mouth and took a bite. Xiao Jinyan looked at her hungry appearance and couldn't help but feel distressed. Didn't you eat dinner? Shen Chuwei puffed her cheeks and said vaguely, I ate, and now I'm hungry again. Shen Chuwei originally fell asleep, but woke up again after sleeping for an hour, and was still awakened by hunger. She was a person who couldn't sleep when she was hungry, and she was too lazy to turn on the light, so she came to the couch in the dark and ate some mung bean cakes to fill her stomach. Who would have thought that Xiao Jinyan would come the first time she ate in the middle of the night? Look what I brought you. Xiao Jinyan took off the package on his body, opened the package, and put the oil paper package in front of her. From the time Xiao Jinyan took the package, Shen Chuwei's eyes were always on his hand, then the package, and then when she saw him take out the oil paper package, she knew that Xiao Jinyan brought her delicious food. Watching Xiao Jinyan open the oil paper package, the fragrance of the tea fruit immediately wafted out. She was hungry, and she was even more greedy after smelling it. The mung bean cake in her hand was no longer fragrant. Shen Chuwei finished the mung bean cake in her hand, picked up the tea fruit and put it in her mouth and took a bite, feeling extremely satisfied. Xiao Jinyan got up and poured her a cup of tea and put it in front of her, and then watched her eat. Watching Shen Chuwei eat is actually a kind of relaxation and enjoyment. After Shen Chuwei ate and drank enough and rinsed her mouth, she was picked up by Xiao Jinyan and went to bed. It was very hot in summer, and she was sweating just by taking off her clothes. But Xiao Jinyan liked to hold her to sleep. Sleeping close to the stove in summer, you can understand how she feels at this time. Xiao Jinyan felt that Xiaoju's body was soft, and her skin was cool, and it was particularly comfortable to hold her. Have you gotten used to living here these days? It's pretty good. I feel it's no different from the Hehuan Palace. Shen Shui's words were half comforting Xiao Jinyan, but they sounded different to Xiao Jinyan. He suddenly remembered that Shen Shui had always wanted to move back to Xiun Pavilion. Now she's moving to Xiaoxiang Pavilion. Is she happy? It's no wonder Xiao Jinyan thought too much. 2 days ago, my mother came. Did she say anything? The queen came to give me something and had lunch. Shen Shui played with Xiao Jinyan's hair. Compared to his hot body, his hair was cool and comfortable to touch. A touch of surprise flashed across Xiao Jinyan's eyes. My mother used to dislike Xiaoju, but now she seems to have changed her mind about Xiaoju. The queen likes spicy food. We had hot pot together for lunch, and the queen ate as fast as ever. My mother's taste is indeed a bit heavier. Shen Shui nodded in agreement, and suddenly felt a big hand touching her belly. The heat from the palm of her hand was very hot. She raised her head and looked at Xiao Jinyan in confusion. Your Highness, what are you doing? Xiao Jinyan said, it feels magical to think that this place will give birth to our children in the future. Of course Shen Shui is a modern doctor, who knows much more than Xiao Jinyan, but still finds it magical. Xiao Jinyan leaned down, buried his face in Shen Shui's neck, and said faintly, I have to go out for a while, and I can't come to see you for a while. Shen Shui grabbed Xiao Jin's arm and asked, where are you going, Your Highness? Xiao Jinyan answered concisely, I will lead the army in person on behalf of my father. Leading troops to fight is the fastest opportunity to gain real power. But, he won't see Xiaoju for a long time. Shen Shui held Xiao Jinyan's handsome face with both hands and looked at him worriedly, will there be danger? Xiao Jinyan kissed the corner of her lips, there is definitely danger, just wait for me to come back. It would be great if I could secretly follow Your Highness, and help Your Highness get out of danger. It is obvious that this is a foolish dream. If the Emperor found out that she was not in Xiaoxiang Pavilion, he would be furious. Xiao Jinyan held her hand tightly, stop talking in your sleep. Shen Shui. That night, she was tossed around for a long time. Maybe it was because they had been separated for a long time and she was reluctant to leave. Before dawn, Xiao Jinyan sat at the head of the bed, staring at the person on the bed for a long time by candlelight. He got up and left until dawn. Shen Shui woke up and saw that there was no one around her. For the first time, she felt that she missed Xiao Jinyan a little. She suddenly seemed to think of something, and her forehead was full of thoughts. I forgot to ask Xiao Jinyan how long he would be out. On the day when Xiao Jinyan led the army to fight, there were bursts of firecrackers in the palace, which were actually the sounds of whips. Unfortunately, Shen Shui could not see Xiao Jinyan wearing armor. But she could imagine that he must have an outstanding figure and was very handsome. After Xiao Jinyan left, Shen Shui became more and more sleepy. After lunch, she fell asleep on the couch. It was not until dark that she was woken up by Chengzi. Shen Shui was a sleepyhead, and Chengzi always knew that she was a sleepyhead, so she didn't think much about it. After dinner, Shen Shui washed and went to sleep again. In the dead of night, a black figure like a ghost approached the bed, holding a candle in his hand, and looked at Shen Shui closely. At this time, Shen Shui was sleeping very deeply, the kind that even thunder could not wake up. Naturally, he didn't notice that someone had sneaked into her bedroom and looked at her with a candle. The man in black stared at her for a long time. His eyebrows and eyes really looked like Xiaoju, but there was a difference in age. If Xiaoju grows up, she should be this cute. He is not sure that Shen Shui is the person he is looking for. It would be great if you are really Xiaoju. We have been looking for you for so many years and everyone is almost unable to hold on. The man in black stared for a long time, then extinguished the candle and went to Yuxiang Palace. Compared with the last time, the man in black did not go in directly this time, but looked outside and found that concubine Su was not bathing, so he turned over and went in. Concubine Su was about to take off her clothes and rest, and saw a shadow on the wall, walking towards her. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Iyun Si. Chapter 308. Concubine Su guessed who the visitor was, and she was surprised. Recently, the man in black always came at a different time than the agreed time. What if she was bathing? Wouldn't he have seen her naked? She quickly tied her belt and turned to look at the visitor. Why didn't you come at the agreed time again? The man in black came over and stood in front of Concubine Su. Concubine Su subconsciously took a step back, mainly because there were too many men in black, and standing in front of him was too stressful. The man in black got straight to the point. I'm here to ask you a few questions. Concubine Su said, You ask, do I dare not answer? It's good to know, the man in black said with satisfaction. You have a good relationship with Shen Liangdi, you should know how old she is and where she comes from. She is 15 years old this year, and her 16th birthday is coming soon. She is the illegitimate daughter of Minister Shen, and has been raised in the countryside since she was a child. You can find out these things by just checking, Concubine Su said. The man in black also felt that Concubine Su would not dare to lie to him. I'll check it out. Concubine Su couldn't help but said, I said she's not Xiaju, nor Fengwu, why don't you believe it? The man in black stared at Concubine Su for a long time, and suddenly approached her. The prince favors Shen Liangdi, aren't you jealous? Concubine Su told the truth, I used to be jealous, but not now. The man in black was a little curious, why? He doesn't like me, why should I like him? Concubine Su reminded, don't try to take advantage of Shen Liangdi, a gentleman doesn't take away what others like. The man in black stared at her for a while, and couldn't help laughing, is this why you haven't been in the bed? Concubine Su was stunned when she heard this. How could he know that she didn't sleep with him? This look was clearly mocking her for not having the opportunity to sleep with him after entering the East Palace for so long. What does it have to do with you? The man in black shrugged, it has nothing to do with me. The more Concubine Su thought about it, the more she felt something was wrong. She stared at the man in black. No, how did you know? The man in black touched his nose. I guessed. Concubine Su. It seems that she confessed without being asked. Concubine Su couldn't help beating her chest and stamping her feet. She coaxed herself with one sentence and told the truth. Asterisk. The weather was getting hotter and hotter. Concubine Su came to Xiaoxiang Pavilion with a paper umbrella when the sun was about to set. Shen Chuwei was sleeping soundly and was woken up by Concubine Su. What time is it? You are still sleeping. Shen Chuwei rubbed her sleepy eyes and saw Concubine Su. You are here. You are so sleepy, aren't you afraid of gaining weight? Concubine Su poked her belly. Shen Chuwei was quite proud, that may disappoint you. I can't gain weight. Concubine Su heard this and envied and hated. She suddenly came over curiously, Your Highness has been gone for almost half a month, do you miss Your Highness? Yes, but there is no internet here, otherwise, she could have called and video chatted with Xiao Jinyan. Concubine Su felt that she was asking about something that was not relevant to her, and this question obviously made Shen Chuwei miss His Highness even more. She changed the subject again, Are you safe recently? Shen Chuwei looked at Concubine Su in confusion, I'm fine, what's wrong? Nothing, as long as I'm fine. Concubine Su was worried that the man in black would come to find Shen Chuwei directly, but fortunately he didn't. Asterisk. Shen Chuwei discovered a problem, that is, the little eunuch in the imperial kitchen would stare at her every time he delivered food, as if he wanted to see her out and stop. Thinking that he missed his sister, she didn't say anything harsh, but just asked him not to look at her next time. That day, Shen Chuwei was lying on a rattan chair under a tree and taking a nap. A dirty cat jumped down from the top of the wall, came all the way to the bottom of the tree, circled around Shen Chuwei, and suddenly opened its claws and pounced on Shen Shuwei. At the critical moment, concubine Su saw a dirty cat pounce on Shen Shuwei, so she picked up the broom in the corner and ran over. She tried to drive the wild cat away. However, the wild cat was very fierce. It failed to pounce on Shen Shuwei, but pounced on concubine Su. Concubine Su screamed in fear and waved the broom to stop the wild cat from pounce on her. Shen Shuwei was awakened by the scream. When she opened her eyes, she saw a cat pounce on concubine Su, and a scream rang out. Concubine Su's face was scratched by the cat, leaving 3 bloody marks. The cat scratched people and wanted to run away, but was caught by the little rabbit who came over after hearing the sound. "It's bleeding, it hurts," concubine Su cried. Shen Shuwei hurried to concubine Su's side, grabbed her hand, and began to check the wound, not forgetting to comfort her. "Let me take a look first, don't be afraid." "Will I be disfigured?" concubine Su cried even more sadly when she thought of herself becoming an ugly monster. Shen Shuwei looked at the wound and found that the 3 bloodstains were all beginning to turn black, which also showed that the cat's claws were poisonous. "Cat's claws are poisonous. Then I'm not going to die." Concubine Su's heart fell to the bottom of the valley, and her eyes were full of fear of death. Shen Shuwei didn't have time to explain. She helped concubine Su stand up and sit on the stool, then picked up the teapot and poured her a glass of water. The water in the teapot is Lingquan water, which can cure all poisons. She handed the water to concubine Su. "Drink the water quickly." "I don't want to drink water. I'm about to die." "What water should I drink?" concubine Su cried out of breath. Shen Shuwei saw concubine Su crying with her eyes closed. She had no choice but to pick up the teacup and hand it directly to her lips, and threatened, "If you don't drink it, you will really die." Concubine Su stopped crying immediately. "Really?" Shen Shuwei opened her eyes and said with a very serious expression, "When have I ever lied to you? Then I'll believe you." Once concubine Su held the teacup and drank the water obediently. Shen Shuwei was relieved when she saw this, and then told Chengzi, "Bring the medicine box over." Chengzi quickly brought the medicine box over and opened it. Shen Shuwei carefully treated the wound on concubine Su's cheek. After the bandage was done, concubine Su covered her face and looked at Shen Shuwei with her red eyes. "Am I going to be disfigured?" Shen Shuwei said very confidently, "No." Concubine Su saw that Shen Shuwei was so sure. She thought for a while and said, "Then I'll believe you again." The little rabbit came over with the wild cat. "My lady, it was this cat that scratched concubine Su." Shen Shuwei reminded, "Be careful, don't get scratched by the cat, its claws are poisonous." The little rabbit nodded, "I know." Shen Shuwei came over, squatted in front of the wild cat, and looked into its eyes. A few seconds later, Shen Shuwei took out a tube of medicine from her sleeve pocket and smeared it on the cat's paw with a cotton swab. "Give someone a taste of their own medicine." After the smearing was completed, Shen Shuwei ordered, "Little rabbit, let the cat go." The little rabbit hesitated for a while, but still let the wild cat go. As soon as the wild cat got free, it ran away immediately. Concubine Su looked at Shen Shuwei with a puzzled look. "Why did you let it go? It dared to scratch me, I will never forgive it." Shen Shuwei felt a wave of nausea and hurriedly covered her mouth. Good night, my dears. Please support me with monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. More updates will be added if there are more tickets. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yunsi. Chapter 309. The man in black squatted beside the tree man to observe Shen Shuwei. While Shen Shuwei was resting, he also closed his eyes to rest. He faintly woke up because of concubine Su's shout. The scene that just happened all fell into his eyes. His focus was on Shen Shui's squatting in front of the cat, and his calm smearing of unknown things. Then the cat ran away. What did she just do to the cat? The man in black turned around and chased the cat with doubts. Chun 11 was closest to Shen Shui. When she saw that the little master was nauseated and wanted to vomit, he hurriedly stepped forward to help her. "Little master, what's wrong with you?" Concubine Su walked over with her face covered, not caring about crying. She looked at Shen Shui with a worried look on her face. "Shen Liangdi, what's wrong with you? Are you feeling uncomfortable somewhere?" Shen Shu retched a few times, and felt better after vomiting out. He wiped his mouth with the handkerchief Chun 11 handed over. "It's okay, that cat smells too bad. When the little rabbit brought the wild cat over just now, she smelled an unpleasant smell, which was even worse than the odor of water. Well, she kept holding her breath and applied poison to the cat's paws. It wasn't until the little rabbit let the cat go that she started to breathe, but she was still disgusted." Concubine Su was still a little worried and ordered, "Little rabbit, ask the imperial doctor to come and take a look at Shen Liangdi." Shen Shui stopped the little rabbit, and then looked at Concubine Su. "No, people inside can't get out during the confinement period. I know some medical skills." Concubine Su was indignant and said, "The emperor is really disgusting. In order to let the rain and dew fall on the palace, he locked you up." Then she said with some pride, "The emperor thought that he could control his highness in this way, but it's a pity that his highness still didn't stay with them." Shen Shui knew that Concubine Su was outspoken, but she didn't expect that she would even scold the emperor. "Be careful, walls have ears." Concubine Su quickly covered her mouth, looked around, and asked Shen Shui cautiously, "Is there anyone else here?" Shen Shu suppressed a smile and said, "We are all our own people. Chengzi has been following her, and the others were arranged by Xiao Jinyan. After more than half a year, they are still reliable." Concubine Su patted her fragile heart and said, "That's good, I still want to live for a few more decades." After Concubine Su finished speaking, she touched her face and began to worry again. "My face really won't be disfigured, right? The face is the most important thing for a woman. I don't know if the condensation cream can remove scars." Shen Shui took out a small bottle as thick as a finger from the medicine box, stood up and handed it to Concubine Su. "I have scar removal cream, the effect is very good." Concubine Su looked at the ointment in her hand, reached out and took it and looked at it carefully. It was an ordinary small bottle with no texture at all. "Is it more effective than the condensation cream?" Shen Shui said, "I was injured last year and I used the scar removal cream. There are no scars anymore." Concubine Su still remembered that Shen Shui was injured by an arrow last year while trying to save his highness. The injury was 100 times more serious than the injury on her cheek. She was so surprised. This ordinary medicine is so effective. Shen Shui was confident in the medicine she prepared, and she didn't explain much. "You'll know after you try it." "Then I'll take it back and try it." Concubine Su took the fan from Caxia's hand and left Xiaoxiang Pavilion, covering her face. Little Rabbit washed his hands carefully several times before coming to Shen Shui and seeing that Shen Shui was fine, otherwise he would not be able to explain to his master. "Little master, why did you let that wild cat go? What if that wild cat comes back and hurts the master again?" Shen Shui drank the lemon and honey tea prepared by Chun 11, "Don't worry, that wild cat won't come back." At this time, the dirty wild cat ran all the way to Kameng Palace. Most of the poison on Shui Yan's body had been cured, and she was lying on the couch, drinking tea leisurely, waiting for the good news. After Shen Shui was imprisoned in Xiaoxiang Pavilion, although Xiao Jinyan loved her very much, he never stayed overnight in Kameng Palace once. She learned from Chang Liangyuan that on the day Shen Shui was imprisoned in Xiaoxiang Pavilion, it was Xiao Jinyan who gave it to him personally and had Xiaoxiang Pavilion cleaned. This is enough to show Xiao Jinyan's love for Shen Shui. So these days people train cats to scratch people. Cats have very sensitive noses. Shui Yan found the clothes Shen Shuwei had worn, and then asked people to start training. He also specially asked people to put the cat into a bucket of water, and then put it into the Xiaoxiang pavilion until it was completely dirty. Just when Shui Yan was imagining Shen Shuwei's proud expression after being poisoned and disfigured, suddenly a dark figure rushed toward her, slapping a claw at her face. Ah! Screams resounded throughout the Kameng Palace. Shui Yao heard the shouting and ran in quickly, and saw a dirty cat jumping out of the window and escaping. Looking at the princess again, there are 3 more blood stains on her cheeks. Princess Shui Yao was so frightened that she turned pale and ran over quickly. Shui Yan covered her face turned pale with fear. She cried in fear and shouted uncontrollably, "My face, my face! Princess, don't be afraid. I will call the imperial doctor right away." Shui Yao hurriedly went to the imperial doctor. When Shui Yan looked at herself in the bronze mirror, on her flowery face, 3 blood marks were clearly visible. The blood flowing out was not bright red but black. Even if you are not a doctor, you will know that the cat's claws are poisonous when you see the black blood. The cat just now looked familiar to her, and she guessed that it might be her own cat, so she quickly took out the antidote and swallowed it in her mouth. When she looked in the mirror, she found that the blood flowing out was still black, and she was immediately frightened out of her mind. What's going on? She took the antidote, but why didn't she get rid of the poison? When Imperial Physician Wen came, Suiyan was already scared silly. "Imperial Physician Wen, my princess was scratched by a cat, please take a look at her." Imperial Physician Wen hurriedly put down the medicine box and checked Suiyan's wound. Suiyan said with a trembling voice, "Cat's claws are poisonous. I will take your pulse first." Imperial Physician Wen knew it was poisonous when he saw the black blood on the wound, but he had to take the pulse to confirm the diagnosis. After taking the pulse, Imperial Physician Wen frowned, "This is the first time I have encountered this poison, I am afraid it may disfigure her." Suiyan was directly scared silly. Shui Yao cried and begged, "Imperial Physician Wen, you must save my princess cannot be disfigured. I will treat the wound for the young lady first, use some medicine, and then find a way to detoxify." The man in black hiding in the dark was stunned after watching the process. How could the cat listen to Shen Shuwei so much? Could it be that she was? At this moment, Suiyan regretted so much that her intestines turned green. Chang Liangyuan was also sitting on the couch, drinking tea leisurely. Huaixiang trotted in, "My lady, I heard that concubine Su and concubine Shui were both scratched by cats." Chang Liangyuan was a little surprised to hear this. "Really? They were actually caught, then what about concubine Shen?" Huaixiang shook his head, "Concubine Shen didn't hear about it. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading." Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 310. Although it's a pity, it's not bad that the 2 concubines were scratched and disfigured. It seems like they were dragged by the concubines every day. Chang Liangyuan continued drinking tea after finishing speaking. Early the next morning, concubine Su covered her face with a fan in one hand and waved a handkerchief in the other. She came to Xiaoxiang Pavilion and told Shen Shuwei the important news immediately. "Shen Liangdi, concubine Shui's face was scratched by a cat yesterday. She seems to be in danger of being disfigured." After hearing the words, Shen Shuwei guessed that Shui Yan had found someone to let the cat in yesterday, and the paws were deliberately poisoned, and the purpose was obvious. The cat targeted her and ended up scratching concubine Su. The poison she applied was not that easy to remove, and there was indeed a risk of her face being ruined. Shen Shuwei stared at concubine Su's face for a while and asked, "Does your face hurt?" Concubine Su shook her head, "It doesn't hurt much, but it's a little itchy. I scratched it because I wasn't afraid of disfigurement." Yesterday, Shen Shuwei told her not to scratch the wound, no matter how itchy it was, Otherwise it would disfigure her face. Shen Chu said slightly, the itching means that the wound is healing, and it will be cured after a few days. As long as your face is not disfigured, you can tolerate it. Women love beauty, and concubine Su loves beauty even more. She would not survive if her face was disfigured. I asked Xiao Gaiza to pick cherries. Eating will distract her attention. Shen Chuwei took concubine Su to sit down in front of the round table under the tree, with fresh cherries and pastries placed on it. Although we are under lockdown, we can still eat and drink without worries. Tao Liangyuan came over after getting the news. After hearing Shen Chuwei's words and knowing that concubine Su was fine, she felt relieved. Why do I feel that concubine Shui is a bit stupid? Shen Liangdi will be locked up now. People are saying that Shen Liangdi has completely fallen out of favor. Concubine Shui is still trying to deal with Shen Liangdi, Tao Liangyuan asked. Concubine Su guessed, perhaps concubine Shui doesn't want to see that Shen Liangdi is prettier than her and wants to destroy her. Tao Liangyuan nodded, this possibility cannot be ruled out. In order to divert concubine Su's attention, the last 4 people played a game of landlords. In addition to Shen Chuwei, concubine Su, Tao Liangyuan, and Chen 11 had their faces covered with notes. In the end, Shen Chuwei was too sleepy and said, I can't hold on anymore, so I asked the little rabbit to come over and take my place. Concubine Su couldn't help complaining, why are you so sleepy? You're more sleepy than before. Maybe it's because of the summer. Let's not talk about it. I'm going to take a nap, Shen Chuwei said and gave up his position to the little rabbit. He climbed onto the wicker chair and fell asleep after a while. The 4 of them used to play landlords together for fun and entertainment, and little rabbit watched and learned a bit. After the little rabbit came on stage, the 3 of them turned the situation around and covered the little rabbit's face with notes. Because of the landlord fight, concubine Su's attention was all on the cards, and her focus was on winning or losing. And everything was caught in the sight of the man in black in the tree. The man in black has been watching Shen Chuwei's every move these days. Only returning to Yuxiang Hall, attention began to be on the cheeks again. I can't help but want to reach out and scratch it. Especially when I was lying in bed trying to sleep, I felt hot and itchy, and I had no intention of sleeping at all. She simply got out of bed and came to the table, poured herself a glass of water and drank it. The man in black quietly jumped in from the window, went straight to the table and sat down. He poured himself a cup of herbal tea on his own, deftly, as if he were at home. The first few times concubine Su saw the man in black suddenly visiting, she would be extremely scared. Now she is used to it, so she was not surprised when she saw him coming and continued to drink tea calmly. The man in black picked up the teacup and looked at concubine Su's face. There was white gauze on it, and no wound could be seen. Concubine Su stepped forward to save Shen Chuwei, but she was injured. It really surprised him. In the palace, the most fake thing is friendship and family ties. After observing for so long, he discovered that concubine Su and Shen Chuwei had a good relationship, and they were sincere. How's your face? Concubine Su raised her chin, are you here to see my joke? Then you will be disappointed. Shen Liangdi said that I will not be disfigured. I'm just asking casually. The man in black took a sip of tea. I came here to ask, what did Shen Liangdi do to the cat yesterday to make it so obedient? How did I know? I was so frightened at the time. Concubine Su is still scared when she thinks about it now. The man in black said coldly, I really don't know anything about it. What use do I need from you? Concubine Su happened to be drinking tea. When she heard this, she was so frightened that she choked and coughed. Is this going to kill people and silence them? She hurriedly explained, I answer all questions, how can I say it's useless? How can I answer if I don't know? Can you be reasonable? The man in black crossed his legs and looked at concubine Su with a half smile, I'm not a good person, so what's the point? Concubine Su refused to give up and argued, "Then I have helped you anyway. Even if there is no use value, it's easy to get together and go away, right?" The man in black laughed out loud. He stood up while holding onto the round table. He approached her with his evil and cold eyes and said, "You may not know that I kill people like hemp. If you don't obey, I will kill you just like crushing an animal. It's as simple as an ant." Concubine Su was frightened. She swallowed hard. "Then can you spare my life for the sake of helping you? I am only 17 years old and have not seen the outside world. When I met my Prince Charming, he didn't know what love was, and he died at a young age. It's so overwhelming." The man in black couldn't hold back the words and laughed out loud, "Look at your potential." It wasn't until the man in black climbed through the window and left that Concubine Su realized that the man in black was deliberately saying harsh words to scare her and make fun of her. She silently said cruel words in her heart, "Next time you scare me, I will take your last name." Asterisk. Shen Chu slept for a whole morning and was woken up by Chengzi. "Master, what do you want to eat for lunch? Do you want braised pork?" Shen Chu shook his head slightly and said, "I won't eat any more. I want to eat hot and sour potato shreds and dried chili tofu." Okay. Chengzi happily went to make lunch. The lunch in the imperial dining room was still delivered by the tall little eunuch and placed on the dining table as lunch. 60 meatballs, venison, crystal elbow, braised pork. Shen Chuwei was stunned after watching the lunch. "The sun is out in the west today? This food is almost as good as the queen's food. My little master, you can eat with peace of mind." The man in black lowered his head and smiled. In fact, he had substituted these dishes from others. Shen Chu glanced at the little eunuch and saw that he lowered his head with a guilty conscience, but he was not afraid of poisoning him. "The food provided in the lunchroom is so good, why not eat it?" Shen Chuwei picked up the chopsticks, finished the 60 meatballs, and looked at the crystal elbows, thinking that he hadn't eaten in a while, and he became a little greedy. She picked up the crystal elbow and took a bite. She found that her stomach was churning violently, and she retched several times. She stood up and ran to the trash can to vomit. Chengzi patted Shen Chuwei's back soothingly, "My lord, are you okay?" Seeing this, the little rabbit stepped forward, grabbed the little eunuch, and asked, "Tell me, what did you put in the dish?" Good evening, my dears. 4 chapters and 8,000 words, more to come. Please support with monthly votes and recommendation votes. More votes will be added.